Section 2 of Abe and Mawruss. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Abe and Mawruss, Being Further Adventures of Potash and Perlmutter, by Montague Glass. Chapter 2. The Judgement of Paris. There was an intimate connection between Abe Potash's advent in the lobby of the Prince Clarence Hotel one hot summer day in June, and the publication in that morning's Arrival of Buyers column of the following statement and news item: Greaseman, M., Dry Goods Company, Syracuse. M. Greaseman, Ladies and Misses Cloaks, Suits, Waists, and Furs, Prince Clarence Hotel. Nevertheless, when Abe caught sight of Mr. Greaseman lolling in one of the hotel's capacious fauteuils, he quickly looked the other way and passed on to the clerk's desk. Then he asked in a loud tone for Mr. Elkin Reinberg of Boonton, New Jersey, and almost before the clerk told him that no such person was registered, he turned about and recognized Mr. Greaseman with an elaborate start. "Why, how do you do, Mr. Greaseman?" he exclaimed. "Ain't it a pleasure to see you? What are you doing here in New York?" Greaseman looked hard at his interlocutor before replying. Some 2 years earlier there had been an acrimonious correspondence between them, with reference to a shipment of skirts lost in transit, a correspondence ending in threatened litigation, and Mr. Greaseman had transferred his account with Potash and Perlmutter to Sammet Brothers. Hence he regarded Abe's proffered hand coldly. Instead of rising to his feet, he continued to puff at his cigar for a few moments. "I know your face," he said at length, "but your name ain't familiar." "Think again, Mr. Greaseman," Abe said, quite unmoved by the rebuff. "Where did you seen me before?" "I think I seen you in a law office oncet," Greaseman said. "To the best of my recollection, the occasion was one which you said you didn't give a damn about my business at all, and if I wouldn't pay for the skirts, you would make it hot for me. But, so far what I hear it, I ain't paid for the skirts, and didn't sweat none neither." "Why not let bygones be bygones, Mr. Greaseman?" Abe rejoined. "I ain't got no bygones, Abe," Greaseman replied. "The bygones is all on your side. I ain't got the skirts, so I didn't pay for 'em." "Well, what is a few skirts that fellows should be enemies about 'em, Mr. Greaseman? The skirts is vorbei schon long since already. Why don't you anyhow come down to our place once in a while and see us, Mo?" "What would I do in your place, Abe?" "You still use a couple of garments like we make it in your business, Mo," Abe continued. "You got to buy goods in New York once in a while, ain't it?" "Well, I do and I don't, Abe," Mo rejoined. "I ain't the back number which I oncet used to was, Abe. I got fresh ideas a little too, Abe. Nowadays, Abe, a buyer couldn't rely on his own judgment at all. Before he buys a new season's goods, he's got to find out what they're wearing on the other side first. So with me, Abe, I go first to Paris, Abe. Then I see there what I want to buy here, Abe, and when I come back to New York, I buy only them goods which has got the ideas I seen it in Paris." "But how do you know we ain't got the ideas you had seen it in Paris, Mo?" "I don't know, Abe," Mo replied, "because I ain't been to Paris yet so far. I am now on my way over to Paris, Abe, and furthermore, Abe, if I would been to Paris, you understand, what does a fellow like Morris know about designing?" "What do you mean, what does a fellow like Morris know about designing?" Abe repeated. "Don't you fool yourself, Mo. Morris is a first-class A number 1 designer. He gets his ideas straight from the best fashion journals. Then, too, Mo, when it comes to up-to-date styles, I ain't such a big fool neither. You understand? I know one or two things about designing myself, Mo, and you could take it from me, Mo, there ain't no house in the trade, Mo, which they got better facilities for giving you the latest up-to-the-minute style like we got it." "Sure, I know," Mo continued, "but as I told you before, Abe, I ain't in the market for my fall goods now. I am now only on my way to Paris, and when I would come back it would be time for you to waste your breath." "I could waste my breath all I want to, Mo," Abe rejoined. "I ain't like some people, Mo. My breath don't cost me nothing." "What do you mean?" Mo cried indignantly. He had allowed himself the unusual indulgence of a cocktail that morning as a corollary to a rather turbulent evening with Leon Sammet, and he had been there absently chewing a clove throughout the interview with Abe. "I mean Jaime Salzman, designer for Sammet Brothers," Abe replied. "There's a fellow which he got at such a breath, Mo, he ought to put a revenue stamp on his chin." "That may be, Abe, but the fellow delivers the goods. Sammet Brothers are sending him to Paris this year, too, Abe. He's sailing with Leon Sammet on the same ship with me, Abe." "Well, then all I can say to you is, Mo, you should look out for yourself, and don't play no auction pinochle with that fella. Every afternoon he's playing with such sharks like Mo Rabiner and Mark Spasinski. If he ever got out of a job as a designer, he can go on the stage at one of them continual performances as a card juggler yet. A 350 hand is the least that fella deals himself." "One thing is sure, Abe, you could never sell me no goods by knocking Jaime Salzman." "I ain't trying to sell you no goods, Mo. I'm only talking to you like an old friend should talk to another. When are you coming back?" "About July 1, I should be here," Mo replied. "And if you want to come and see me like an old friend, Abe, you are welcome. Only I got to say this to you, Abe. I forgot them skirts long since ago already, and I wish you the same." When Abe entered his showroom that morning, Morris Perlmutter had just arranged a high-neck evening gown on a wire model. "Well, Abe, what do you think of it?" he exclaimed proudly as he wiped his glistening brow. Abe fingered the garment's silken folds and puffed critically at a black cigar. "What could I think, Morris?" he replied. "The garment looks all right, Morris, and he ain't kicking, you understand? But I tell you the honest truth, Morris, the way things is nowadays, Morris, a fella could be Elijah the Prophet already, and he couldn't tell in June what's going to please the garment buyers in September." Morris flushed angrily. "I don't know what comes over you lately, Abe. Nothing suits you," he cried. "I got here a garment which, if we would be paying a designer $10,000 a year yet, he couldn't turn us out nothing better, and yet you're kicking." "What do you mean, kicking?" Abe rejoined. "I ain't kicking. I'm only passing a remark, Morris. I am saying I couldn't tell nothing about it, Morris, because so far ahead of time like this, Morris, a garment could look ever so rotten, Morris, and it could turn out to be record seller anyhow." "So, Abe," Morris broke out furiously, "you think the garment looks rotten? What? Well, all I got to say is this, Abe. If the garment looks so rotten, you should quick hire someone which could design a better one, because I am sick and tired of your kicking." "What's the matter? You got pepper up your nose all of a sudden, Morris," Abe protested. "I ain't saying nothing about the garment is rotten. I'm only saying it gets so nowadays that in June a fella turns out a style which, if we was making masquerade costumes already, it would be freaky anyhow, and yet, Morris, it would go big in September. You get the idea what I'm talking about, Morris?" "I get the idea all right," Morris retorted with bitter emphasis. "You got the nerve to stand there and tell me this here garment is freaky like a masquerade costume. Schon gut, Abe. From now on I wash myself of the whole thing. I am through, Abe. You should right away advertise for a designer." Abe rose wearily to his feet. "With a touchy proposition like you, Morris," he said, "a fella couldn't open his mouth at all. I ain't saying nothing about you as a designer, Morris. All I'm saying, Morris, is a designer could be a fella which he has so high grade like Paquin or any of them Frenchers, but when he gets his ideas from fashion papers oder the Daily Cloak and Sioux Gazette, Morris, then once in a while he turns out a sticker." Morris was stripping the garment from the display form, but he paused to favor his partner with a glare. "What do you want me to do then?" he asked. "Make up styles out of my own head, Abe? If I wouldn't get my ideas from the fashion papers, Abe, where would I get them?" "Where would you get them?" Abe repeated. "Why, where does Jaime Salzman, designer for Sammet Brothers, and Charles Eisenblum, designer for Klinger & Klein, get their ideas, Morris?" This was purely a rhetorical question, but as Abe paused to heighten the effect of the peroration, Morris undertook to supply an answer. "Them suckers don't get their ideas, Abe. They steal 'em. If a concern gets a run on a certain garment, Abe, them two high-B robbers make up a duplicate of it before you could turn around your head. That's the kind of cutthroats them fellas is, Abe." "Sure, I know," Abe continued, "but they got to turn out some garments of their own, Morris, and they get their ideas right from headquarters. They get their ideas from Paris, Morris. Only this morning I hear it that Jaime Saltzman sails for Paris on Saturday." "Well, I couldn't stop him, Abe," Morris commented. "Sure, I know, Morris," Abe went on, "but things is very quiet here in the store, Morris, and for a month yet we wouldn't do hardly no business. I could get along here all right until, say, July 15th, anyhow." For 2 minutes Morris looked hard at his partner. "What are you driving at, Abe?" he asked at length. "Why, I'm driving into this, Morris," Abe continued. "Why don't you go to Paris?" "Me go to Paris?" Morris exclaimed. "Why not?" Abe murmured. The suggestion did seem preposterous after all. "Why not?" Morris repeated. "There's a whole lot of reasons why not, Abe, and the first and foremost is that the Atlantic Ocean would got to run dry, and they got to build a railroad there first, Abe. I crossed the water just once, Abe, and I wouldn't cross it again if I never sold another dollar's worth more goods so long as I live, Abe, and that's all there is to it." "What are you talking nonsense, Morris? One of them big boats like the Mauretania, there ain't no more motion than if a fellow would be going to Coney Island, Morris." "That's all right, Abe," Morris replied firmly. "Me, if I would go to Coney Island, I'm taking always the trolley, Abe, from New York side of the bridge. Furthermore, Abe, if Sammet Brothers sends a trinker like Jaime Saltzman to Paris, Abe, they got a right to spend their money the way they want to. But all I got to say is that we shouldn't be afraid they would cop out any of our trade on that account, Abe. Jaime would come home with new ideas of champagne and wine and not garments, Abe." "Sure, I know, Morris," Abe retorted. "But if you go over to Paris, Morris, you would come back with some new ideas, which you would turn out some real snappy stuff, Morris. As it is, Morris, with a sticker like you got it there, Morris, you would ruin our business." "All right, Abe, I heard enough. You got altogether too much to say for a fellow which comes downtown at 10 o'clock with no excuses nor nothing." At this point, Abe interrupted his partner long enough to relate his visit to Mo Greaseman, but the information entirely failed to placate Morris. "All right, Abe," he shouted, "why don't you go to Paris? That's all you're fit for. I got a wife and baby, Abe, but with a fellow which we's got no more interest in home, you understand, than he wants to go to Paris, Abe. All right, go ahead, Abe. Go to Paris. I'm satisfied." Abe regarded his partner for one hesitating moment. "Schon gut, I will go to Paris," he said, and the next moment the elevator door closed behind him. For 5 minutes after Abe's departure, Morris gazed earnestly at his newest creation. He had intended the model as a pleasant surprise to his partner, since not only had he conceived the garment to be a triumph of the dressmaker's art, but it had been finished far in advance of the season for originating new styles. He had confidently expected an enthusiastic reception of this chef d'oeuvre, but in view of Abe's scathing criticism, he commenced to doubt his own estimate of the beauty of the dress. Indeed, the longer he looked at it, the uglier it appeared, until at length he grabbed it roughly and literally tore it from the wire form. He had rolled it into a ball and was about to cast it into a corner when the elevator door opened and a young lady stepped out. "Good morning, Mr. Perlmutter," she said. Morris turned his face in the direction of the speaker, and at once his mouth expanded into a broad grin. "Why, Miss Smith," he exclaimed, as he rushed forward to greet her, "how do you do? Me and Mrs. Perlmutter was just talking about you today. How much you think that boy weighs now?" 16 pounds, Miss Smith replied. 22, Morris cried. "Net." "You don't say," said Miss Smith. "We got to thank you for that, Miss Smith," Morris continued. "The doctor says without you anything could happen." Miss Smith deprecated this compliment to her professional skill with a smiling shake of the head. "We wouldn't forget it in a hurry," Morris declared. "Everything what that boy is today, Miss Smith, we owe it to you." "You're making it hard for me, Mr. Perlmutter," Miss Smith replied, "because I've come to ask you a favor." "A favor?" Morris replied. "You couldn't ask me to do you a favor, because it wouldn't be no favor. It would be a pleasure. What could I do for you?" "I have to leave town tomorrow on a case," Miss Smith explained, "and I need a dress in a hurry, something light for evening wear." Morris frowned perplexedly. "That's too bad," he said, "because just at present we got nothing but last year's goods in stock, all except this." He unfolded the model and shook it out. "What a pretty dress!" Miss Smith cried, clasping her hands. "Pretty?" Morris exclaimed. "How could you say it was pretty?" "It's perfectly stunning," Miss Smith continued. "What size is it, Mr. Perlmutter?" "The usual size," Morris replied. 36. "Why, that's just my size," Miss Smith declared. "Let me see it." Morris handed her the dress, and she examined it carefully. "What a pity," she said. "It has a slight rip in front. Somebody's been handling it carelessly." "Sure, I know," Morris said. "I tore it myself, Miss Smith. But if you really and truly like it, Miss Smith, which I tell you the truth, I don't, and my partner neither, you're welcome to it, and I would give you a little piece from the same goods which you could fix up the rip with." "I couldn't think of it," Miss Smith replied. "Not at all, Miss Smith. You would do me a favor if you'd take it along with you right now." Miss Smith fairly beamed as she opened her handbag. "How much is it?" she asked. "How much is it?" Morris repeated. "Why, Miss Smith, you could take that dress only on one condition. The condition is that you wouldn't pay me nothing for it, and that next fall, when we really got something in stock, you would come in and pick out as many of our highest priced garments as you would want." Morris's hand shook so with this unusual access of generosity that he could hardly wrap up the garment. "Also, Miss Smith, I expect you will come up and have dinner with us as soon as you get back from wherever you're going. Already the baby commences to recognize people which he meets, and we want him. He should never forget you, Miss Smith." The cordiality with which Morris ushered Miss Smith into the elevator was in striking contrast to the brusque manner in which he greeted Abe half an hour later. "No," he growled. "Where was he now?" "By the steamship office," Abe replied. "I'm going next Saturday." "Going next Saturday?" Morris repeated. "Where to?" "To Paris," Abe replied. "On the same ship with Mo Greaseman, Leon Sammet, and Jaime Salzman." Morris nodded slowly as the news sank in. "Well, all I could say, Abe," he commented at length, "that I don't wish you and the other passengers no harm, you understand? But with them 3 suckers on board the ship, I hope it sinks." The 5 days preceding Abe's departure were made exceedingly busy for him by Morris, who soon became reconciled to his partner's fashion-hunting trip, particularly when he learned that Mo Greaseman formed part of the quarry. "You got to remember one thing, Abe," he declared. "Extremes is nixed. Let the other fella buy the freaks. What we are after is something in moderation." "You shouldn't worry about that, Morris," Abe replied. "I wouldn't bring you home no such model like you showed at me this week." "You'd be lucky if you wouldn't bring home worser yet," Morris retorted. "But anyhow, that ain't the point. I got here the names of a couple of commission men which it is their business to look out for greenhorns." "What do you mean, greenhorn?" Abe cried indignantly. "I ain't no greenhorn." "That's all right," Morris went on. "In France, only the Frenchers ain't greenhorns. You ain't told me what kind of stateroom you got it." "Well, the outside room's $125, and the inside room was $85," Abe explained. "So I took an inside room, because the light wouldn't come in and wake me up so early in the morning, Morris, and $40 is as good to me as it is to them suckers what runs the steamboat company, ain't it?" Nevertheless, when Abe found himself in his upper berth, the The morning after he had parted with Minnie, Rosie, and Morris at the pier, he had reason to regret his economy. He shared his stateroom with a singer of minor operatic roles, who, as a souvenir of a farewell luncheon ashore, carried into that narrow precinct an odor of garlic that persisted for the entire voyage. In addition, the returning artist smoked Egyptian cigarettes and anointed his generous head of hair with violet brilliantine. Hence it was not until the boat was passing Browhead that Abe staggered up the companionway to the promenade deck. "Why, hullo, Abe!" cried a bronzed and bulky figure. "I ain't seen you for almost a week." "No," Abe murmured. "Well, if you had wanted to see me, Leon, you know where you could find me. Just below the pantry my stateroom was inside. A dog shouldn't got to live in such a place." At this juncture Saltzman appeared, to summon his employer to a game of auction pinochle in the smoking room, and as Abe started to make a feeble promenade around the deck house, he encountered Moe Greaseman. After Moe had taken Abe's hand in a limp clasp, he nodded in the direction of the smoking room. "What do you think of them two suckers?" he croaked. "They ain't missed a meal since they came aboard." "What could you expect from a couple of tough propositions like that?" Abe replied. "Was you sick, Moe?" "Sick!" Greaseman exclaimed. "I give you my word, Abe. Last Thursday night I was so sick that I commenced to figure out already how much I would have saved in premiums if my insurance policies would be straight life instead of endowment. No, Abe, this here business of going to Paris for your styles ain't what it's cracked up to be. Always up to now I got fine weather crossing, but the way the water's been the last 6 days, Abe, I'm beginning to think I could get just so good ideas of the season's models right here in New York." "You know, Moe," said Abe, "I'm starting to feel hungry. I wish that fellow with the chauffeur would come." Hardly had he spoken when the ship's bugler announced luncheon, but it was some minutes before Moe could summon up sufficient courage to go below to the dining saloon, and when they entered they found Leon Sammet and Hymie Saltzman had nearly concluded their meal. "Steward!" Leon shouted as Moe sat down next to him. "Bring me a nice piece of Camembert cheese." "One moment, Leon," Greaseman interrupted. "If you bring that stuff under my nose here, I would never buy from you $1 worth more goods so long as I live." "That fella goes too far, Abe," he said, after Leon had canceled the order and departed to drink his coffee in the smoking room. "That fella goes too far. Yesterday afternoon I was sitting on deck, and the way I felt, Abe, my worst enemy wouldn't got to feel it. Do you believe me, Abe, that fella got the nerve to offer me a cigar yet. It pretty near finished me up. He only done it out of spite, Abe, but I fooled him. I took the cigar, and I got it in my pocket right now." "Don't show me," Abe cried hurriedly. "I'll tell you the truth, there ain't nothing in the smoking habit. I'm going to cut it out. Waiter, bring me only a plate of clear soup and some dry toast." "There ain't no need for a fellow to smoke, Moe. It's only an extra expense." "I think you're right, Abe," Moe said, "but I know that this here cigar cost Leon $25 on board ship here, and I thought I would show him he shouldn't get so gay." Despite Abe's resolution, however, a large black cigar protruded from his mustache when he stood on the wharf at Cherbourg 24 hours later, and a small, ill-shaven stevedore, clad in a dark blouse and shabby corduroy trousers, pointed to the cloud of smoke that issued from Abe's lips and chattered a voluble protest. "What does he say, Moe?" "I don't know," Moe replied. "He's talking French." "French!" Abe exclaimed. "What are you trying to do, kid me? A dirty schlemiel of a greenhorn like him should talk French? What an idea!" Nevertheless, Abe was made to throw away his cigar, and it was not until the quartet were snugly enclosed in a first-class compartment en route to Paris that Abe felt safe to indulge in another cigar. He explored his pockets without result. "Moe," he said, You got maybe another cigar on you?" "I'm smoking the one which Leon gave it me on the ship the other day," Mo replied. "Leon, be a good fella. Give him a cigar." "I give you my word, Mo, this is the last one," Leon replied as he bit the end off of a huge Invincible. "You got something there bulging in your vest pocket, Abe. Why don't you smoke it?" "That ain't a cigar," Abe answered. "That's a fountain pen." "Smoke it anyhow," Leon advised, "because the only cigars you can get on this train is French government cigars, and I'd sooner tackle a fountain pen as one of them rolls of spinach." "That's a country," Abe commented. "Couldn't even get a decent cigar here." "In Paris you can get plenty good cigars," Jaime Salzman said. And Jaime was right, for at the Gare St. Lazare, Monsieur Adolphe Kaufmann Levi, commissionaire, awaited them, his pockets literally spilling red-banded perfectos at every gesture of his lively fingers. Monsieur Kaufmann Levi spoke English, French, and German with every muscle of his body from the waist up. "Welcome to France, Mr. Potash," he said. "You had a good voyage, doubtless, because you Americans are born sailors." "Maybe we are born sailors," Abe admitted, "but I must have grown out of it. I'll tell you the honest truth. If I could go back by trolley and it took a year, I would do it." "The weather is always more settled in July than in August," said Monsieur Kaufmann Levi, "and I wouldn't worry about the return trip just now. I have rooms for all you gentlemen, or on one floor of a hotel near the opera. Taxi-meters are in waiting. After you have settled, we will take dinner together." Thus it happened that at 6:30 that evening, Monsieur Kaufmann Levi conducted his four guests from the Restaurant Marguerite to a sidewalk table of the Café de la Paix, and for almost an hour they watched the crowd making its way to the opera. "You see, Mo," Abe said, "everything's is tunics this year. Tunics, eau de chiffon, overskirts, neck collars, and yokes." Mo nodded absently. His eyes were glued to a lady sitting at the next table. "You gotta come to Paris to see 'em, Abe," he murmured. "They don't make 'em like that in America." "We make as good garments in America as anywhere," Abe protested. "Garments I ain't talking about at all," Mo whispered hoarsely. "I mean peaches. Did you ever see anything like that lady there sitting next to you? Look at that get-up, Abe. Ain't it chic?" "It's a pretty good-looking model, Mo," Abe replied, "but a bit too plain for us. See all the fancy-looking garments there are around here?" "Plain nothing," Mo muttered. "Look at the way it fits her. I tell you, Abe, the French ladies know how to wear their clothes." A moment later the couple at the next table passed along toward the opera, and once more Abe and Mo turned their attention to the crowds on the boulevard. For the remainder of their stay in Paris, Abe and Leon spent their time in a ceaseless hunt for new models, and their nights in plying Mo Greaseman with entertainment. It cannot be said that Mo discouraged them to any marked degree, for while he occasionally hinted to Abe that the New York cloak and suit trade was an open market and garment buyers had a large field from which to choose, he also told Leon that he saw no reason why he should not continue to buy goods from Sammet Brothers, provided the prices were right. Nearly every evening found them sitting at the corner table of the Café de la Paix, and upon many of these occasions the next table was occupied by the same couple that sat there on the night of Abe's arrival in Paris. "You know, Abe, that dress is the most uniquest thing in Paris," Mo exclaimed on the evening of the last day in Paris. "I ain't seen nothing like it anywhere." "Good reason, Mo," Leon Sammet cried. "It's rotten. That's one of last year's models." "What are you talking nonsense? One of last year's models?" Mo Greaseman cried indignantly. "Don't you think I know a new style when I see it?" "Mo is right, Leon," Abe said. "You ain't got no business to talk that way at all. The style is this year's model." "Of course, Abe," Leon said with ironic precision. "When a judge like you says something, you understand, then it's so. Take another of them 60-cent ice creams, Mo." Ordinarily, Abe would have turned Leon's sarcasm with a retort in kind, But Leon's remark fell on deaf ears, for Abe was listening to a conversation at the next table, and the language was English. "It's time to start back to the hotel," said the young lady to her escort, who was an elderly gentleman. Abe turned to Moe and Leon. "Excuse me for a few minutes," he said. "I got to go back to the hotel for something." He handed Leon a 20-franc piece. "If I shouldn't get back, pay the bill," he cried, and jumping to his feet, he followed the couple from the next table. The old gentleman walked feebly with the aid of a cane, and the young lady helped him by the arm as they proceeded to the main entrance of the Grand Hotel. Abe dogged their footsteps until the old gentleman disappeared into the lift, and the young lady retired to the winter garden that forms the interior court of the hotel. As she seated herself in a wicker chair, Abe approached with his hat in his hand. "Lady, excuse me," he began. "I ain't no loafer. I'm in the cloak and suit business, and I would like to speak to you a few words, something very particular." The young lady turned in her chair. She was not alarmed, only surprised. "I hope you don't think I'm asking you anything out of the way," Abe said, without further prelude, "but you got a dress on, lady, which I don't know how much you paid for it, but if 300 of these here now francs would be any inducement, I'd like to buy it from you. Of course, I wouldn't ask you to take it off right now, but if you would leave it at the clerk's desk here, I would call for it in half an hour." The young lady made no reply. Instead, she threw back her head and laughed heartily. "It ain't no joke, lady," Abe continued, as he laid 3 flimsy notes of the Bank of France in her lap. "That's as good as American greenbacks." The young lady ceased laughing for a minute, hesitated between indignation and renewed mirth, but at last her sense of humor conquered. "Very well," she said. "Stay here for a few minutes." Half an hour later she returned with the dress wrapped up in a paper parcel. "How did you know I wouldn't go off with the money, dress and all?" she asked as Abe seized the package. "I took a chance, lady," he said, "like you're doing about the money which I gave you being good." "Have no scruples on that score," the young lady replied. "I had it examined at the clerk's office just now." When M. Adolphe Kaufmann Levi bade farewell to Moe, Abe, Leon, and Jaime Salzman at the Gare St. Lazare, he uttered words of encouragement and cheer which failed to justify themselves after the 4 travelers' embarkment at Cherbourg. "You will have splendid weather," he had declared. "It will be fine all the way over." When the steamer passed out of the breakwater into the English Channel, she breasted a northeaster that lasted all the way to the Banks. Even Jaime Salzman went under, and Leon Sammet walked the swaying decks alone. Twice a day he poked his head into the stateroom occupied by Moe Greaseman and Abe Potash, for Abe had thrown economy to the winds and had gone halves with Moe in the largest outside room on board. "Boys," Leon would ask, "ain't you going to get up? The air is fine on deck." Had he but known it, Moe Greaseman developed day by day with growing intensity that violent hatred for Leon that the hopelessly seasick feel toward good sailors, while toward Abe, who groaned unceasingly in the upper berth, Moe Greaseman evinced the affectionate interest that the poor sailor evinces in anyone who suffers more keenly than himself. At length Nantucket Lightship was passed, and as the sea grew calmer, 2 white-faced invalids that on close scrutiny might have been recognized by their oldest friends to be Moe and Abe tottered up the companionway and sank exhausted into the nearest deck chairs. "Well, Moe," Leon cried as he bustled toward them, smoking a large cigar and clad in a suit of immaculate white flannels, "so you're up again." The silence with which Moe received this remark ought to have warned Leon, but he plunged headlong to his fate. "We're now only 24 hours from New York," he said, "and suppose I go downstairs and bring you up some of them styles which I got in Paris." "You shouldn't trouble yourself," Moe said shortly. "Why not?" Leon inquired. Because for all I care, Mo replied viciously, you could fire him overboard. I would also buy from you a button. What's the matter? Leon cried. You know what's the matter, Mo continued. You come every day into my stateroom and mock me yet because I'm sick. I mock you? Leon exclaimed. That's what I said, Mo continued. And if you wouldn't take that cigar away from here, I'll break your neck when I get on shore again. Leon backed away hurriedly, and Mo turned to Abe. Am I right or wrong? He said. Abe nodded. He was incapable of audible speech, but hour by hour he grew stronger until at dinner time he was able to partake of some soup and roast beef, and even to listen with a wan smile to Mo's caustic appraisement of Leon Sammet's character. Finally, after a good night's rest, Mo and Abe awoke to find the engine stilled at quarantine. They were saved the necessity of packing their trunks for the cogent reason that they had been physically unable to open them, let alone unpack them. Hence, they repaired at once to breakfast. Leon was already seated at the table, and he hastily canceled an order for Yarmouth bloater and asked instead for a less fragrant dish. Good morning, Mo, he said pleasantly. Mo turned to Abe. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, Abe, he said. I would be down in your store to look over your line. Steward, Leon Sammet cried, never mind that steak. I would take the bloater anyhow. Abe and Mo breakfasted lightly on egg and toast and returned to their stateroom as they passed the battery. Say, looky here, Mo, Abe said. I want to show you something which I bought for you as a surprise the night before we left Paris. I got it right in the top of my suitcase here. It wouldn't take a minute to show it to you. Abe was unstrapping his suitcase as he spoke, and the next minute he shook out the gown he had purchased from the young lady of the Café de la Paix and exposed it to Mo's admiring gaze. How did you get a hold of that, Abe? Mo asked. Abe narrated his adventure at the Grand Hotel while Mo gaped his astonishment. I always thought you got a pretty good nerve, Abe, he declared, but this sure is the limit. How much did you pay for it? 300 of them now, francs, Abe replied. But I've been figuring out the cost of manufacturing and material, and I could duplicate it in New York for $40 a garment. You mean $35 a garment, don't you? Mo said. No, I don't, Abe replied. I mean $40 a garment. Why do you say $35? Because at $40 a piece, Abe, I could use for my Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo stores about 50 of these garments, and you ought to figure on at least $5 profit on a garment. Well, maybe I'm figuring it a little too generous, you understand? So if that goes, Mo, I will quote the selling price at, say, $40 a garment to you, Mo. Sure it goes, Mo said, and I'll be at your store tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to decide on sizes and shades. Abe's passage through the customs examination was accomplished with ease, for nearly all his Paris purchases were packed in the hold to be cleared by a custom-house broker. His stateroom baggage contained no dutiable articles, save the gown in question, and a few trinkets for Rosie, who was at the pier to greet him. Indeed, she bestowed on him a series of kisses that re-echoed down the long pier, and Abe's pallor gave way to the sunburnt hue of his amused fellow passengers. In one of them Abe recognized with a start the tanned features of the young lady of the Café de la Paix. Mo, he said, nudging Greaseman, there's your friend. Mo turned in the direction indicated by Abe, and his interested manner was not unnoticed by Mrs. Potash. How's your dear wife and daughter, Mr. Greaseman? She said significantly. I suppose you missed them a whole lot? When Mo assured her that he did, she sniffed so violently that it might have been taken for a snort. Well, Abe, he said at length, I'll be going on to the Prince Clarence, and I'll see you in the store tomorrow morning. Goodbye, Mrs. Potash. Goodbye, Mrs. Potash replied, with an emphasis that implied good riddance. And then, as Mo disappeared toward the street, she sniffed again. It didn't take long for some loafers to forget their wives, she said. Well, Abe, Morris said, after the first greetings had passed between them that afternoon, I'm glad to see you back in the store. You ain't half so glad to see me back, Morris, as I am that I should be back, Abe replied. Not that the trip ain't paid us, Morris, because I got a trunk full of samples on the way up here, which I assure you is a work of art. Sure, I know, Morris commented with just a tinge of bitterness in his tones. Paris is the place for styles. Us poor suckers over here don't know a thing about designing. Well, Morris, I'll tell you, Abe went on. You are a first-class A number 1 designer, I got to admit, and there ain't nobody that I consider as better as you in the whole garment trade. But, here he paused to unfasten his suitcase. But, Morris, he continued, I got here just one sample style, which I brought it with me, Morris, and I think, Morris, you have got to agree with me, such models we don't turn out on this side. Here he opened the suitcase, and carefully taking out the dress of the Café de la Paix, he spread it on a sample table. What do you think of that, Morris? He asked. Morris made no answer. He was gazing at the garment with bulging eyes, and beads of perspiration ran down his forehead. Abe, he gasped at length, where did you get that garment from? Before Abe could answer, the elevator door opened and a young lady stepped out. It was now Abe's turn to gasp, for the visitor was none other than the tanned and ruddy young person from the Café de la Paix. Good afternoon, Mr. Perlmutter, she said. I've just got back. Oh, good afternoon, Miss Smith, Morris cried. I hope I'm not interrupting you, she continued. Not at all, Morris said, not at all. Then a wave of recollection came over him, and he muttered a half-smothered exclamation. Abe! Miss Smith! He almost shouted, and then he sat down. Say, looky here, Abe, what is all this anyway? Miss Smith comes in here and, well, upon my word, Miss Smith interrupted, if it isn't the gentleman from the Café de la Paix, and of all things, there is the very dress. Abe shrugged his shoulders. That's right, Miss whatever your name is, Abe admitted. That's the dress, and since I paid you $60 for it, I don't think you got any kick coming. $60! Morris cried. Why, that dress as a sample garment only cost us $22.50 to make up. Cost us? Abe repeated. As a sample garment? What are you talking about? I'm talking about this, Abe, Morris replied. That dress is the self-same garment which I designed it, and which you says was rotten and freaky, and which I gave it to Miss Smith here for a present, and which you paid Miss Smith $60 for. And here is the $60 now, Miss Smith broke in. I hurried here as fast as I could give it to you, Mr. Perlmutter. One moment, Abe said. I don't know who this young lady is or nothing, but do you mean to told me that this here dress which I bought in Paris was made up right here in our place? Here, Abe, Morris said, I want to show you something. Here is from the same goods a garment, and them goods, as you know, we got it from the Hamsucket Mills. So far what I hear it, the Hamsucket Mills don't sell their output in Paris. Am I right or wrong? Abe nodded slowly. Well, Mr. Perlmutter, Miss Smith said, here's your $60. I've got to get back to my patient. You know that I went to Paris with a rheumatic case, and I've left the old gentleman in charge of a friend. I came here to settle up. Excuse me, Abe said. I ain't been introduced to this young lady yet. Why, I thought you knew her, Morris said. This is Miss Smith, the trained nurse, which was so good to my Minnie when my Abby was born. Is that so? Abe cried. Well, Miss Smith, you should take that $60 and keep it, because, Morris, on the way over, I sold Mo Greaseman 50 garments of that there style of yours at $40 apiece. You don't say, Morris cried. You don't say so. Well, all I got to say is, Miss Smith, in the first place, if Abe wouldn't have told you to keep that $60, I sure would have done so. And in the second place, I want you to come in here next week and pick out half a dozen dresses. Ain't that right, Abe? "Yeah, I bet you that's right, Morris. We wouldn't take no for an answer," Abe replied. "And you should also leave us your name and address, Smith. Because Gott soll hüten, if I should be sick, you understand, I don't want nobody else to nurse me but you." "Say, looky here, Abe," Morris said the following morning. "That trunk full of Paris samples which the custom house says we would get this morning ain't come yet." Abe clapped his partner on the shoulder and grinned happily. "What do I care, Morris?" he said. "For my part, they should never come. I ain't got no use for Paris fashions at all. Styles which Morris Perlmutter originates is good enough for me, because I always said it, Morris, you're a crackerjack high grade A No. 1 designer." End of chapter 2.